Welcome to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I interview business leaders who are committed to their own growth and the development of everyone on their team. If you enjoy my podcast, be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Welcome back to another episode of the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. A year ago, I learned about a company called Ethisphere, whose purpose is to help other companies operate with the highest levels of integrity and ethics. And since that was so aligned with what we do here at Grow Strong Leaders, I wanted to learn more about their work. So I invited their chair, Erica Salmon Byrne, to be a guest on my podcast. And she is at episode 317, where she described what's required for a company to be honored as one of the world's most ethical companies. Now, fast forward to today, and I have with me someone whose company has received this honor 14 times. Companies have to apply fresh every year, and the application process is quite rigorous. So this is no small feat. My guest today is Noreen Fierro from Principal Financial Group. Welcome, Noreen. I'm so glad to have you with me.
Thank you so much, Meredith. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, before we jump into our conversation today about what Principal is doing so well, I want to tell my listeners a little bit more about you. Noreen is Senior Vice President and Enterprise Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer at Principal. Her career spans 30 years in the financial services industry, both in-house in legal and compliance roles and as outside counsel. Prior to joining Principal in 2022, she was Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer at Guardian Life, and before that held various senior level positions at Prudential Financial. You'll hear Noreen's passion for strong leadership in our conversation today, and she speaks about it often at industry events. So, Noreen, let's start with your own journey as a leader and some of the things that you've learned over the years in your various roles.
Thank you, Meredith. It's a great question because I think leadership is learned. And I will say, when I first became a leader, I really thought I had to do everything on my own. I did not really understand, I think, the import of it takes a village to do things right, and no one leader can survive without the strength and support of their team. And so over the years, I would say that the biggest lesson I've learned is that I'm not in it alone. I may ultimately have to lead, and it is my primary accountability, but it takes all of us. And by empowering the people on my team to do the jobs they've been hired to do and trusting them to come to me and raise issues, I feel like we get the best outcomes.
You know, one of the things I picked up in our first conversation is how passionate you are about leadership in general and wanting to pay it forward to others in what in sharing what you've learned. If you were sitting down with someone that was a brand new leader and they didn't know the things that you've learned over these past years, what would you say would be one or two things that would just be a top of mind that you'd want them to know that would save them a lot of time and possibly pain in their role as a leader?
The first thing I would say is ask a lot of questions. None of us have all the answers. I don't care how senior we get in our career journey. We all still need guidance. We all still need to, just check our thinking with others who are more experienced than us. And as a new leader, that is the most critical thing you can do. You just have to raise your hand. Just because you've been promoted into this role, asking questions is not going to, make the people above you think you don't know how to do your job. It just means, to me, they recognize that you're inquisitive. You want to make sure you're kind of thinking about things the right way. And I've been fortunate in my career to have people I always felt comfortable going to who were more seasoned than me in their career journey and had their own lessons learned that they could share. And I think having the confidence to raise your hand and ask questions when you're not sure, or just sometimes gut check your own thinking against things is probably the best advice I can give a new leader. There's no playbook on this. There's lots of leadership courses, there's lots of books, there's all of that, and they can be helpful. But the bottom line is every role is different, every team dynamic is different. And I think, you've been put and given this opportunity because the people above you saw something in you and trusted that you could do the role. But that doesn't mean they expect you to be perfect from day one or have it all down on day one. And I think as you lean into that journey, you just have to be willing to raise your hand and ask questions. Feedback is a gift. And, asking questions and getting feedback, even after a meeting or something, and just, making sure you're on the right track and your thinking is kind of what it needs to be, I think gives you that confidence to build your leadership skill sets. But it is about asking questions and knowing you're not in it alone. Everybody above you has been where you are, and I've been very fortunate to have leaders above me that are more than happy to share their lessons learned and help me and guide me. And I think had I not raised my hand and asked questions, I might not have had the benefit of their learning experiences.
What I'm hearing is you're talking like about that is vulnerability, being okay with saying, I don't know, or I need your help. And it seems like that would be a kind of a stumbling block for new leaders when they have this sense that, oh, I'm supposed to already know how to do this if I'm in this role. Did you experience any of that yourself when you were in your younger leadership years?
Of course. I mean, it is, I think, human nature to feel like, okay, I've been given this amazing opportunity. I must know how to do it right away. And I will tell you to this day in my career, I rely on people around me. If I'm not sure of something, even people that report to me, I'm like, walk me through this issue. I'm not sure I'm understanding it. Take me through. I rely on subject matter experts around me all the time. And I think good leaders do that. They recognize that they don't have all the answers, nor should they. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson is accepting that as a leader, that doesn't mean you have to have all the answers. It means you need to know who to go to gather the information, to help make well-informed decisions, to help, guide your judgment. But you're not going to know everything, nor should you have to. And I think confident and strong leaders recognize that and are comfortable with that. But I think that's not always an easy place to get. It sometimes takes a little bit to get the confidence and the comfort to know you're not going to know everything. And that's okay. That's okay. That's why
Mhm.
you have really strong people around you.
Mhm. That's such a good point. And it's making me think about the whole application process that Principal has gone through in applying for this Ethisphere award and becoming honored in such a way as one of the world's most ethical companies. It takes a lot of commitment to continue to apply for that every year because it is like starting fresh. What would you say is behind the commitment from the folks there at Principal? Or why was this important to keep pursuing that recognition?
I truly think, having been here now several years, one thing that struck me when I joined was the true pride my colleagues take in working for a company that's been designated one of the world's most ethical companies. It is genuinely built into our culture here. I think people appreciate working for our organization because of that. I think they value that. And as a result, when we apply every year, to your point earlier, Meredith, this is a rigorous process. It's thousands of pages of documents and many, many questions. And, we always want to ensure we're putting our best foot forward. So we bring a cross-functional working group together and we really collectively drive the effort to ensure that we have the most current information and are putting forth, the most accurate information. And my team is not going to know that for the whole company. We're not going to know, the most current processes that a certain department may have implemented. And so we bring everybody together and we work together to put forth the best work product that reflects the current state of principle, in terms of the questions that the application asks. And that's really helped us a lot. It's fostered partnership. It's fostered just kind of this collective ownership. And I think, a company that gets this designation, it's not a small group of people that get it for the company, it's the whole. And when you bring the whole into the process itself, it becomes a collective ownership, which is what I think has really helped the organization. But it is a way we identify ourselves, very much so. It's just kind of baked into kind of doing the right thing. And it's not just something we say. I see it every day in how we live our core values.
I want to go back to what you were saying about it being a collective effort, because I know just from what you were saying earlier and what we talked about in our first conversation, you are such an advocate for bringing diverse people together that have the expertise that's needed for a specific project. What were some of the challenges you faced in bringing such a wide group of people across so many different departments together for this particular application process?
One of the things that I did, because it is, to your point, it's a challenge, Meredith, right? People get tapped on the shoulder, hey, you're going to be part of this working group. And in fairness to all of us, because we've all gotten those taps on the shoulders at points in our career, I really tried to anchor and do a kickoff meeting and explain the why we were all together and why it was so important and why I needed them to be very engaged in the process and also give people an out. Like if the commitment that was going to be required to pull this together was beyond their bandwidth, let's have that conversation. I offered to go to their leaders if they felt like they just couldn't support the work effort that was needed. But I really tried to talk about the why and explain to folks why we were all together and what we needed to achieve as a collective group. And I've done that now the last several years since I've been here. And I think just by bringing people together, kind of setting the expectations on the front end, explaining the why, talking about, what questions are new, what focus has changed by Ethisphere. We may have some new people every year, depending on the questions. And we bring those people into the fold and getting them up to speed. And, it has made a big difference. And people understand the important role they play. This isn't meant to be an administrative exercise. This is meant to be like, hey, let's bring our A game. Let's put our best foot forward as a company. And I need all of you thinking creatively and bringing forth what we're actually doing in support of the questions that we're getting. And I think by just having that initial 45-minute kickoff call, answering any questions people may have, it's really helped engage the cross-functional team in a different way, I think.
What you just brought up is so important. I'm thinking of entrepreneurs who get ideas, or people that are heads of different departments and they're gung-ho with this new project that they're doing, and they don't take time to do that key piece that you just described, that kickoff meeting, where people truly understand the why. Why are we doing this? Because there's so often when we can get excited about something ourselves and we assume other people know or understand, and then it backfires and we wonder why we're not getting the support. So I applaud you for taking that step. It makes such a difference to be able to have people air their views or air concerns up front so you can address those. And so what is it like then, once you've got the folks on board, how do you keep the momentum going so they sustain their enthusiasm? Because it's a lengthy process, right?
It is.
How do
It
you,
takes,
yeah, how do you
we,
sustain that?
it's interesting. We kick off our process. The application is due the end of October. We kick off our process in July. And we bring everybody together. And what we do, Meredith, to sustain is we have biweekly meetings. And we just get a touch base with everyone. We try to troubleshoot any questions, concerns they have. But we stay close And we make sure we didn't just kind of give them a big assignment and then disappear until right before it's due. My team stays very close to our cross-functional working group. And we thank them throughout the entire process. Everyone is so busy. And this is something that's not part of their day job. It's my ethics team's primary accountability, but we're reliant very heavily on our colleagues around the organization. And I don't ever take that lightly. I think, when you're asking for help, and this is not part of someone's day job, but it's going to take a pretty significant effort on their part, a basic thank you goes such a long way in recognition. And what we try to do after we get the application in, well, sometimes if we have a lot of local people, we'll do a pizza party lunch to just thank everybody and bring them together. And, just little things like that, I think go a long way. And sometimes I think when we're all so busy, you kind of forget those little things that matter to people, and just, making it known how much you appreciate the effort they're putting in for a work product that's basically coming out of your world, even though they don't sit in your world. And it goes a long way.
It sure does. I'm so glad you brought that up because, again, we often can assume, well, people know I appreciate it, but if we don't tell them and express that appreciation in an overt way, how are they supposed to know? So that's so fantastic just to keep that going. And then, of course, you have that waiting period after you submit that
Yes,
because the announcements are made in March, if I remember correctly.
correct.
So
Yes, yes.
you've got a period of time there where you're wondering, did our efforts come through? Well, Principal, as I mentioned, has earned this award 14 times. You had mentioned to me it wasn't 14 consecutive times. So talk a little bit about the pause there that where it didn't occur. What was happening?
So the first year I joined principal was in February of 2022, as you mentioned earlier. And that March, we found out we had not made the list. And I wasn't part of the prior application process. I hadn't been at the organization yet. But what I tried to do is understand what that process was like. What would have made us kind of different that one year? And I came to learn that it was a small group of people that did not bring a collective together to answer the application. And in hindsight, I feel like it was probably a matter of not putting our best foot forward because we weren't as complete with our responses as we could have been, because the
Mm,
people doing it just didn't know about certain things. And what I said to this small, well-meaning group was, this doesn't all fall on your shoulders, right? This is going to be a collective going forward. We're not expected to know all of this. Like, this is, a lot of these questions are outside of our function. We would not know all of this. And that's when we decided we were going to go to a kind of a cross-functional working group model. And so it was one of those things where I think the process really impacted, I think, the variety, just kind of the completeness of our answers in a way that I felt like we hadn't maybe reflected the best of principle that we could have.
mm.
And so the following year, we just changed the process and were able to get back on track because the answers, I think, were more complete. We had the right subject matter experts in the room to help us. And so bring the documentation together. I mean, part of the application is not just answering questions, it's thousands of pages of supporting documentation you have to provide. And so it really is a major effort for the organization. And so, it was interesting because a lot of our fellow employees were, not thrilled that we hadn't made the list. And so we just kind of got us back on track. We got the working group together and were able to put forth our best foot with the most current information.
You know, I want my listeners to be thinking about how this applies to them in whatever function they're in their particular roles, because what you've just shared is just, to me, a powerful lesson in taking time to reflect and do that digging so you extract the lessons from what happened. Anytime any project or action we've taken doesn't turn out the way we hoped it would, what is it that we could do differently that would ensure success next time? And I love the fact that you spoke to the team that had been involved for two reasons. One, to help them not feel bad that
Sure.
like they were the ones that were responsible for us not making it. And so feeling like they let down the whole company. To me, you helped cushion that, but you also didn't blame. It's this whole idea of recognizing we didn't get the result we wanted. How can we work together? And I think that has application in so many areas of leadership where
It truly does. It does. And I look at it this way. Blame does not solve any problems. What's done is done. All you can do is learn and move on. But what I also try to do, Meredith, and I think this is important for any leader, any experience, good, bad, or indifferent, has lessons learned on the positive and on the negative. And sometimes I think we always think lessons learned mean what didn't go right. But as a good leader, you have to also acknowledge what did go right. There's always good things in everything. And maybe they're not good enough to get you over the top and get you the award or the result you were looking for. But there's hardworking people who are always, well-meaning. And that requires recognition too. Like, yeah, you guys worked really hard on this. I'm sorry we didn't get it over the finish line, but let's figure out what we can do next time to get us over the finish line. And I think just factoring that into any lessons learned discussion is really important, because not everything, is just because it didn't achieve the results you were hoping for is a failure. There's good and bad lessons to be learned in everything, and recognition that needs to be called out. And I really try to do that. And in the case of the year we didn't get the recognition from Ethisphere, that team worked very, very hard. And recognizing that was something I didn't want to lose, because to your point, I didn't want them to feel like they had the weight of this, lack of recognition on their shoulders. And so, talking to them about the appreciation I had for the effort I know it takes, because I've been part of the application process at prior organizations, I think went a long way to just letting them know, like, this wasn't on them. And we were just going to learn from it and move on and approach it a little differently the following year. And that's what we did. And we were able to get ourselves back on track with the recognition that is so important to this organization.
you know, thinking about the team, a team is made up of individuals. And I was just imagining how each of the people on that team might have felt. It wasn't just the team felt the weight, those individuals felt that part of responsibility. And it just seems like you handled it so beautifully to help them process that. So then they emerged not feeling defeated, but feeling energized for the next time because they had a better plan for how to do it more effectively. And I think that's a huge aspect of leadership, is helping people recover from setbacks that they have. What else have you found to be helpful in elevating the people who are on your team or that you work with so that they grow in their belief in themselves and their capabilities?
I think one of the things that's just kind of core to who I am is sharing my own bumps in the road. I mean, none of us have done it perfectly. My goodness, we're all humans, for goodness sake. It just kind of, you're going to have fits and starts. You're going to have things in your career you look back on, you're like, maybe I could have handled that a little differently. Hopefully I learned from it. And I'm always willing to share my own experiences with my team, especially if they're feeling like they've disappointed, deliverable, or they had, like, I'm like, we've all been there. And the one thing I always say to folks is own it. Own a mistake. We've all been there. Just own it. The worst thing you can do is try to make excuses. Just own it. I had a situation at a prior organization where the general counsel asked me for like a rundown on, I forget what the topic was. And I had, like anything else, 20,000 things in my inbox to do. And she had asked for it, I don't know, let's say Wednesday afternoon. Thursday morning comes and I had completely forgotten to get it to her. And I was, of course, very upset. I was like, I cannot believe she was my boss's boss at the time. And I was like, oh my goodness. But I emailed her and I profusely apologized. And I said, I can get you something today. I don't know if it's too late, but this just got lost. I'm sorry. Like I did not try to make an excuse as to why. It got lost in my inbox. And I ran into her, um, like a week later, and she's like, we've all been there, Noreen. It's all good. I had enough information that I was good, but I appreciate you owning it. And it went a long way, that the genuineness of the why I didn't try to shy away from. And I think I try to engender that with my own team. Like we all make mistakes, just own it. And then
Mhm.
if you can, fix it, right? But the worst thing you can do, I think, in a professional environment or any relationship is make excuses, because it to me, it undermines your credibility. I think if you're willing to say, hey, I just missed this, I'm sorry. Um, we've all been there. And so I try to do that with my team. I share my own lessons learned and bumps in the road. And I try to never make them feel bad, because that doesn't help anybody. Like, let's just move on.
Mhm.
Let's figure it out. How can I help you? Do you need me to help you with anything? Um, how can I, do you need more support? Do you need more hands on deck? Like, what can I do to help you if I feel like they're really struggling? And I think sometimes just asking that makes a big difference, because then we all feel supported when we get those questions. And it really just reinforces we're not in this alone.
Well, also it conveys to the person you matter. I'm noticing whether you've picked up the stressful look on their face or the franticness in which they're doing things. When you as a leader can pay attention to those little things as you've gotten to know your team members and notice when they're kind of off in some way and then comment on it, that the message that sends about this person cares about me, you can't really put a price on that. It's priceless in a way, because I think it's one of the leadership skills that's so important in retention and motivation, is people feeling like they're cared about. And I love that you are so intentional about doing that with the people on your team. And it also reminded me of this thing of being willing to own it. Two things. One is that willingness to apologize. Sometimes we hesitate because we're afraid it'll make us look weak, when in fact, people respect us more when we're willing to say, yeah, I'm the one that dropped the ball on this. I'm the one that didn't follow up. And I was also thinking personally, Noreen, there have been times when I have been late in responding to an email, and I will apologize. And then I'll start to write something about why. And it's like, I don't need to do that. I
That's
don't need
right.
to be giving a rationale or excuse. Just own it. I love,
Just
that'll
own
be my
it.
little two-word phrase, own it, and keep
I
it
just think
simple.
it just creates a credibility and genuineness of a relationship, right?
Yeah.
Um but I do think as a leader, apologizing when it's appropriate is important. And if it's on me, I'm going to say that. If it's, hey guys, I'm sorry. Hey team, I'm sorry. Like I created a deadline that wasn't feasible. I had a situation where we've had a lot of self-imposed deadlines with a lot of external things we can't control in the last few weeks, and I could tell the fatigue my leaders were feeling, because it was like, okay, give me this report. I need that update. I need this. And I went to the team and said, we're going to stop these three things. These are things that are just for me. No one else in the team, no one else in the company needs them. So we're going to just stop them for now. We're going to skip this month because we have other things going on, budget, things like that we have to contribute to. But getting me these updates is not required right now. If there's a burning platform issue, come and talk to me and we'll deal with it. But otherwise, everything else can just stop. And just by and apologizing and saying, I'm sorry, I didn't realize these were all kind of coming due in the same timeline, went a long way. I mean, several of my leaders reached out to thank me and said thank you. I was really wondering how I was going to get to that. But I think as a leader, part of what our obligation is to keep our finger on the pulse of the team. And when people are feeling overwhelmed, or there's competing priorities and they just don't even know where to start, like we need to pay attention to that and clarify what those priorities are, what those sequencing and deadlines needs to be. Does it even need to be a deadline? Can we just push it because it's not that big a deal? I've always valued and appreciated when I've worked for people like that. Not every leader pays attention to that. And I think for a strong leader, that's part of our obligation, is the health of our team. And you can't do that if you're not paying attention to how much pressure we're all under day in and day out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that whole noticing, right? What are you looking at and what are you looking for? One of the things I'm so curious about, Noreen, related to principle and the whole idea of being an ethical company. I bet my listeners are wondering, what does that really look like on a day-to-day basis? What does that mean in terms of the values people adopt and what their actions are like, both with each other and with all stakeholders, internal and external?
It plays out in a multitude of ways. There's oftentimes conversations. I mean, we are a highly regulated organization. We're a financial services company. So we have regulations that prohibit certain activities. So those are the things we don't have to worry about talking about. If we're not allowed to do it, we're not doing it. It's baked into our DNA. We just don't cross that line. But as you would imagine, there's a lot of things that aren't prohibited by law or regulation that put us into this very gray zone where we have to navigate questions around risk and customer experience and, is it living into our values? And when you sit in a role like mine, it is really refreshing to be able to go to meetings that are, cross-functional and people are doing different jobs. And the first thing we usually ask is, does this align with our values? Does this make sense for Principal's brand? Is this how we want to be known? And then the decision making kind of flows from there. If the answer is yes, like, okay, let's figure out how we're going to do it. And let's make sure we do it in a way that does align with our values. And if the answer is no, we kind of move on to the next topic. And that comes from all different parts of the organization, every level of employee. Like, it is just kind of who we are. It's just baked into our DNA. And when you are in my role, like that means a lot to work for a company where it's just baked into the DNA, because in an odd way, it makes my job much easier, right? I'm not or my team isn't the lone voice at the table trying to push the boulder uphill with a lot of other people have a different perspective. Like, we always work through issues and align on something that collectively we feel good about. And that means a lot. That doesn't mean there aren't 5 meetings on the same topic and we're not constructively challenging each other. It just means we ultimately all have the same objective, which is, let's come up with an outcome that aligns with Principal's core values.
What are some of those core values?
It's always about doing the right thing. That is first and foremost, always. It is about being customer centric. We put our customers first. We serve millions of people, and we take that honor very seriously. We serve people in sometimes the hardest times in their lives. We are a life insurance company. We're a disability company. Like, people are dealing with really material life events, and being able to treat them with respect and making sure that we are leaning into the commitments we made to them when they became our customers, something that is just core to everything we do.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. With that being part of the company's DNA, I was thinking about when you hire people, what would be some of the most important things that you're looking for in a successful candidate that would fit in well with the company's values?
It's I can't obviously speak for the whole company, but I can tell you when we hire in compliance and ethics, we look for people who don't just view this as a job, but more of a mission. What do they truly believe in? And ethics to me is not something you can dictate by policy. It's kind of a core as to who people are. And so when we hire, we talk to people about some of the challenges they've faced in their professional careers, how they've handled those challenges. I think sometimes just by talking to people, you start to gain an insight into whether, their approach to issues would align with how we would want one of our employees to approach an issue. And that has served us well. I mean, we have a great team of institutional knowledge. Principal prides itself, and it's one of the things that drew me here, on very long tenured people. I viewed it this way: people don't stay where they're not treated well and where they don't want to be. And when I interviewed, I think the least tenured person I interviewed with was like 15 years at the company. Everybody else was more than that. And in some cases, people right out of college had never worked anywhere else. And that spoke volumes to me. But we've also, over the last few years, have had natural attrition, retirements, things like that. So it's allowed me to bring new perspectives into the team. But when you bring those new perspectives in, what you don't ever want to lose is what principal prides itself on, which is, doing the right thing and being an ethical company. And so looking for people who their values align with that. And you can get to that by asking just simple, how did you handle this? What was and so we poke at that a little bit because it's a really important aspect of a quality of employee I would want at the organization, certainly on my team.
Well, that makes perfect sense because bringing on the right person who isn't a good fit only creates pain for everyone involved, including
It's not fair to
person.
them. It's not fair to us because ultimately it's not going to work out. And then you're going to have to make some changes or, they work hard at it, but ultimately it doesn't feel right for them either. And they self-select out and then you're starting over. It's just not efficient for anyone.
Well, one final thing I wanted to ask you about while we're talking, Noreen, is this whole idea of mentoring others, because I know one of your values is paying it forward. How does that work when you're mentoring someone else? What are you doing to pay it forward with them?
I'm really sharing lessons over my career, things that I've learned, things that I've maybe didn't do well, but have gotten better at doing. How did I become more insightful about myself? Self-awareness is a tough thing for a lot of people. And I think when you mentor, one of the core things I try to reinforce is you have to be self-aware. You can sit with someone and you can, but if you don't innately understand where your own opportunities are and where you may need to work a little harder, it won't matter what you hear. You have to embrace that feedback. And I think, when I mentor people, first of all, I feel truly, genuinely committed to it. I think, I've gotten where I am today because I've had the gift of amazing mentors throughout my career, some long-term mentors, some for a short period of time, but I embrace everything I've learned from them and I kind of take it into my day to day. And I try to do that with the individuals that I'm fortunate enough to mentor. But I'm first and foremost just make it clear that every road to the top is a little bumpy. Nobody gets there on a smooth glide path. And if they have, they're probably not that good at their job because
Yeah,
they haven't learned
yeah.
those lessons that make us a more genuine leader and empathetic leader. And I really try to kind of work on that with them. And what I say because I have varying mentoring relationships, this is I'm happy to respond to what they need. So I have some mentors that just are more senior and want to kick some ideas around, like, how do you think about this? I need to make some staffing changes. Like, how would you suggest I go about that? I have some mentees who come with like a list of questions and that's what they want answers to. And I'm there to kind of make it what they need it to be. And everyone is at a different place in their career journey and what they need it to be. And so first and foremost, I kind of want it to be me being a servant leader to them. And that means them defining what they would like this mentorship relationship to look like. And they vary. The mentees I have, it's different with every one of them. And I start the first meeting we have with, I'm looking to learn as much from you as you're going to learn from me. And I always do. I inevitably do. New perspectives, a fresh look on something. They're maybe at a different career journey. Maybe they're, just starting out their career. Well, guess what? An old dog like me can learn some new tricks. And so I try to take that into my own takeaways. And I just value the relationship first and foremost. I value the willingness to be honest with each other. That's another ground rule I have. This is a safe space. What you say here does not go anywhere else, but I can't help you if you're not willing to kind of share honestly with me the challenges you're having. And I think once you say that, it just kind of like it sets a kind of more comfortable tone. And then I'm just genuinely more relaxed. So I tend not to be a very formal leader or person, even in my role. I mean, obviously, if I'm presenting to my board of directors, I bring a little formality to that. But, when I'm sitting across someone with a cup of coffee and we're just getting to know each other and I'm trying to help them, I want them to feel comfortable. Like this is just, two pals catching up and we're going to talk and I'll help you through whatever you need. But let's just be, friends first. And so I really do try to kind of strike that. And I have the benefit and the blessing of having taken relationships with me that transcend the organization they started at. And I still maintain very close relationships with prior mentees and colleagues. And, I take pride in that. And that takes effort because, you're not running into each other in the cafeteria anymore. You have to go out of your way to connect and see each other or catch up. And the fact that we do that, even if it's, 3 times a year, I love that. And I take pride in that. And I'm happy to still be a person they feel comfortable reaching out to.
So great. One of the words that pops to mind as I listen to you is humility, Noreen. Throughout our whole conversation, this idea of I don't have all the answers, I ask questions, I look for feedback. You're a constant learner. And I think that that's such a key in an effective leader, which you clearly are. And have been over the years, and even with the people that you're mentoring, to set the stage with them as I'm going to learn from you, to me is just the beautiful aspect of humility, of recognizing, yes, I have worth and you do too. And so it's putting you on a footing where they don't feel intimidated by you. Your whole manner and style is one that puts them at ease. And I just love that. Is
Thank
there
you.
anything else we haven't talked about related to Principal and its culture, or your role as a leader that we haven't covered that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
No, I mean, I feel like I've loved the conversation here, Meredith. Thank you so much for having me. I feel like you've really tried to pull out the things that are most important to me and that I've learned over the years. And so I don't have anything specific to add other than to thank you for the opportunity because I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, well, I did too, Noreen, and I just want to acknowledge you, who you are as a leader, as a human being, and as the one who's spearheading this whole application process with Ethisphere to keep Principal where it wants to be on the forefront of ethical companies. Would you just share how can people connect with you and learn more about Principal if they're interested in doing so?
Sure. Obviously people can reach out through my principal email address, which is my name, Fierro. It's backwards for our email. It's fierro.noreen@principal.com. I'm always happy to kind of connect. And if you're interested, just shoot me an email and we'll try to schedule a call or something like that. But I'm absolutely happy to connect with folks and, provide guidance or just, again, mutually learn from each other. It's always a great opportunity.
Thank you again, Noreen, for being with me. It's been such a pleasure talking with you
Thanks,
today.
Meredith. I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for tuning in to my podcast. Now head over to growstrongleaders.com and check out the powerful tools we've created to help leaders strengthen their character and communication skills. Until next time, I'm Meredith Bell.